Hey everybody, thank you for joining us today as we begin this webinar, a tech panel, just really addressing all the chaos that's going on out there and how we can work together and pull through it. So it's the top of the hour. We're going to give about 2 more minutes. We've got people joining as we speak, so I'm going to give a couple minutes for them to continue logging in, and then right at 2 after the hour, we're going to go ahead and go live and get started. So just hold tight with us 1 minute. All right, welcome everybody. I'm going to make a quick introduction. My name's Justin Shelley with Master Computing. I'm here in the Dallas, Texas area, and I've got a panel of IT/security experts that are going to join me. One of the things, you know, on live events, we learn as we go, and we learned as we were prepping for this one that we can only have 6 cameras live on GoToWebinar at any given time. So we have more than 6 presenters, and you'll see us kind of jumping in and jumping out as different people are sharing their brilliance, shall we say. So just be patient with us on that one. Quick introduction about what we're doing, why we're here today. Honestly, we're here to help. There's a lot of chaos in the world. We're all struggling with it. But we wanted to do this presentation as just a way of sharing some information with the community, what we know, the things that we've seen as we've had to help clients scramble to do business in a new environment. So we have some topics outlined, and I'll introduce those here in just a second. We as panelists have some bullet points, some talking points to go with those, but honestly, we would rather have this be more of a Q&A. So those in attendance here today, feel free to use the chat section. You can use the question and answer section. And if you want to just raise your hand, we'll actually throw you on, open up your microphone if you'd like to talk live to us. That's an option as well. So please be interactive, ask us questions, and we'll do our best at answering those. So again, the purpose here, our primary goal is to kind of bring people together, help each other out. One of the things we're good at as a society is solving problems. And personally, I believe that we do that much better when we band together. So quick introduction, I'm going to have each one of our panelists today introduce themselves, their name, the company, and the general geography that they serve. And I got to rearrange my screen to do that. Give me 1 second. Let's go with Brian, if you'll start.
Yeah, Brian Latchpa with B4 Networks. We service the Southern Ontario in Canada.
All right, and next we'll have Michael.
Yes, this is Michael Bush with Digital Minds International. We have clients throughout Tennessee area and throughout the country and throughout the world.
All right, and Jordan?
I'm Jordan Nip. I'm also with Digital Minds as well.
Verinder? Brenda, you might be on mute if you're talking.
That was me being polite earlier. Thank you. Yeah, Brenda out of Vancouver, BC. Company is Red Rhino Networks. Our headquartered out of Vancouver, but we have offices for them all across North America.
All right, Aaron.
Aaron Zimmerman with Total Care IT. We are in the Boise, Idaho and Idaho Falls, Idaho markets.
Chelsea.
I'm Chelsea Zimmerman, also with Total Care IT, and I'm primarily in the Boise market.
And then we've got David.
Hi, everybody. It's Dave Doris with Turnkey Computer Systems. We service the St. Louis area and Southern Illinois.
And Tom.
Oh, hold on. Let's see if there we go. Tom Wyatt, Traverse City, Michigan, serving all of northern Michigan.
Perfect. Now, quick note, there will be an email that goes out through GoToWebinar. They do this automatically. It's one day after the event, so I wish I could make that happen sooner, but I can't. So about 24 hours from today, everybody who's registered for the webinar will get an email, and that will have all of our contact information, all of the panelists' contact information. We're here to help. Again, like I said, none of us are selling anything today. If you have questions, if you just like to reach out and look for some advice on any of this stuff, if we don't get to your questions today, feel free. We're here as a resource. So be looking for that email about this time tomorrow. So I'll introduce our topics today. There's 5 of them. We're going to talk about staying productive in a work-at-home environment. We'll talk about the challenges of extra coworkers, and by that we mean spouses, kids, pets, any of the other helping hands that we find in our homes. We'll talk about employee engagement and accountability. How do we know if our people are really working? And you know, you're on social media, you see people saying, hey, look at me working from home, and they're in their pajamas playing with their pet. And you know, it's kind of meant to be funny, but it is a challenge. As employers, we want to make sure our people are staying productive. Point number 4, how to host and promote a webinar. It's a great time to learn a new skill if you're not already doing that. And finally, how to use voice over IP or VoIP, along with other online tools, meetings, whatever, to continue selling from home. It's not business as usual, but there's definitely ways we can get creative and find ways to continue working. So with that, again, the chat's open, the Q&A is open. Please throw some questions up there. We're gonna get started. I'm not gonna leave any dead air here, but I'll be watching that as the other panelists do most of the talking. So staying productive in a work-at-home environment. Let's get started there, guys.
All right. I think when it comes to your work at home environment, the core piece is making sure you have a really good workspace setup. Comfortable desk, comfortable chairs, get a headset. But then part of it is also having some boundaries, both time boundaries for yourself when you're working, and also a physical space where it's your space. When you come to work, you have your own space that is important to you. It's where you get your focused work done. Carve that out for yourself at home. Otherwise, it's easy to have your personal and business bleed together. It's common sense, but we need to take the time and really invest into it.
Right.
Yeah, and so another point to that is we're all technology people here. And so just to go in the opposite direction just a little bit, it's also, I think, important to have good old-fashioned pen and paper. Give yourself some space to create some little notes to keep yourself on track during the day. We have to have a technology-based workspace in order to do our jobs and measure our productivity, but that productivity is amplified when you can do little things to divert your attention and keep you on track during the day. And I find that little means of note-taking, small little bullet points kind of help me stay on track throughout the day.
I also like to assign my next day's work before I'm done. So I know exactly when I sit down, what do I need to do when I sit down to my computer. So I know I just hit the ground running and not waste a ton of time on checking emails either. I like to do that before I sit down and do a hard stop with that as well.
Very scheduled, very structured.
Well, just an important part of productivity, I think, in keeping a certain, keeping and establishing and maintaining a level of productivity is having an ability to enter into it and exit it, frequently. So take your 5-minute breaks. Do things like get up and walk around the house for a second, maybe walk around the yard, find a way to get some fresh air. Not to actually take lengthy 20-minute breaks, but just little things that you can do on a very small level to make sure that your attention, your brain is exercising and moving from topic to topic a little bit easier.
Yeah, and if you are a manager or a leader of your business, make sure your people take breaks. Their studies have proven that people who work from home tend to take less breaks. And so it's up to you, each and individual of us as leaders, to make sure that our people are taking the time at least 2 to 3 times a day to go outside, take a quick walk, and take that break. It's very important for our mental health.
And dress for work. Even if you're at home, dress for work.
Absolutely. As you can see, I'm wearing shirt and tie. It's what I do almost every single day during the week when I come into the office. I happen to be at the office today just to stay away from the kids during a webinar, but normally when I'm working at home, I get up, still do the same morning routine, still get dressed, still dress in a shirt and tie. It changes your behavior, it changes your perspective. You're in work mode now. So.
Yeah, the whole point of dressing for work is that your work pajamas, you won't notice them getting tight until it's too late. So make sure you're paying attention to what you eat while you're there.
All right, I'm going to jump in here real quick. One thing I usually do at the beginning of these webinars, and I forgot to do, is just to have everybody jump on chat or the question section. Chat's easier for me, but either way, just let me know how your audio is, audio and video both. I had one person reply that they were having some problems with audio, so just a quick shout out to make sure everybody can hear us okay. With that, we'll continue. And guys, I was kind of chatting in the background. Did we get all the way through the bullets on point 1 there?
There's still a couple. Dave? Nope.
There we go. I'm trying to start and stop my video, so apologize for that, for the awkwardness there. Master your workspace, right? I'm a big proponent in the office also, as well as out of the office working from home. If you have a dual monitor set up, you can keep common tasks on your center monitor, on the left monitor, just somewhere so that they're always right there in front of you. Maybe you've got your inbox over there. Maybe you've got your open Zoom meeting like this so that you can communicate with your teammates and that type of thing is all good. So make sure that your workspace is nice and optimized there. And take those breaks. I mean, that's the big thing for me. It's one thing to get so laser focused that you tune the entire world out while you're working in an environment that's quiet and sort of sterile and all your own in a private home office. But having those breaks really helps. It helps. It helps for mental sharpness and acuity to be able to start and stop your thought process.
All right, with that, let's go ahead and move on to our second topic so we can stay on schedule here. I'll introduce it, the challenges of extra coworkers, spouses, kids, and pets, whatever. And then I'm going to, again, just ask anybody in attendance, if you have any comments, questions, or experiences you just want to throw out there, go ahead and throw those in the chat, the Q&A, or you can raise your hand. So on the challenges, the extra coworkers, and this is probably going to bleed over a little bit into what we already talked about, but what can we offer here, guys?
Well, so I work with my wife. We've worked together for 17 years. We've had separate offices for 14 of that or so. Recently, with this whole quarantine thing, we are back in the same room. You need to set some boundaries. I am a YouTube watcher or listener while I work. If I'm doing network work or whatever else for clients, I like to put something in the background, and it is not always good for her. So you have to be cognizant of what's going on in the area around you, so you don't, bother people. At the same time, hopefully the people that are with you will do the same thing. I have 2 dogs. One of them sits right next to me and sleeps. The other one barks at everything. Luckily for me, my office is in a different part of the house now than where the dog usually barks, but it does, it's very loud, so you got to be careful if you're on a meeting and all of a sudden the dog's barking her head off. So think about what's going on around you. Think about ways to isolate yourself from all of the chaos. I haven't had little kids in years, but I remember how it was when we first started the business. Take steps to minimize that so you'll be more productive.
So kind of along those lines, we actually had a question come in. I'll read this. Nope, we've got a couple. So let me back up. I almost skipped one. Is there something that people who have a small apartment or no separate room can do to make their workspace seem like a different area?
I would look for something to hang up between either what are those things, the curtains, like the curtains you get dressed behind in certain shops or whatever else, something you could put behind you or next to you where it would separate your room out. I would not recommend the tape on the floor less Nessman WKRP thing because it really doesn't work. Something to separate your areas. I've actually seen people use banner stands with just paper on the banner stands to separate their area from everywhere else in the house.
Rearrange furniture. Simple,
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah, or got a folding table. I mean, when I lived in an apartment, I've always had a desk. I'm always a big proponent of having a desk. But you can always set up a folding table too somewhere where just all your work stuff lives. And it doesn't go about the house with you, so you have a separate space for that. Just put it on a tape, find some sort of table, make one. So.
Yeah.
The other thing too is can you hear me? I'm not doing my video right at the moment.
Yep.
But the other thing you can do is just electronic separation. Just something as simple as having a 2-ear headset can help isolate you from anybody else that's in the room. So I think that's an important thing as well.
I was going to say the same thing, Dave. Having a over-ear headset or something that can block out some of the external noise, especially if you have somebody else in the same apartment space, is similar to the open office environment. We already have the same challenges in the open office environment where somebody's, within reaching distance usually of your space. So some of the same similar challenges you would have in an apartment space.
Yeah, and so in this world, I mean, we're going to have to get, our skills sharpened to be able to do that type of isolation from those types of distractions. And it definitely is something that's a challenge for many people, but that's just one electronic trick right there.
I would say definitely strategic placement of your furniture, kind of like Jordan was saying. So actually, I'm in an apartment. If you can see right behind me, maybe there's another desk. I think you can see a little screen behind me. So, I have a coworker right behind me as well. And, you're able to make it work just by using the space that you have. Make sure you have a good headset, headphones, make sure the people around you are getting their space and that they can hear their work. But, use your environment to your advantage. Don't feel like, this is going to be a worse experience right now. I think that good things can come out of this, definitely.
So there's another question that came in. It's a little bit technical, so I'm going to throw it out if we can offer some quick tips and tricks. But also I would say that, and this is from Jason, if we don't get into enough detail here, please feel free to reach out to one of us later because there are a lot of variables in this. But anyways, the question is, are there some easy ways to optimize packets so that Google Meet or Zoom takes precedence over general traffic? Somebody have thoughts on that one?
How technical do we want to get here?
Yeah. Quality of service packet tracking.
Yeah, you need a decent firewall that will help you prioritize the traffic. I don't want to get too technical. I'm running a firewall by a company called Meraki, who is owned by Cisco, and there are default quality of service rules in the firewall. So I've heard a little bit of noise on the voice over IP, but it hasn't, it was really before we started. I've got a connection going to the background. I've got my email open. I don't know, my wife could be in the other room watching TV for all I know, and that's all over the internet right now, and I'm not having a problem. So you've got to find a firewall that will do that for you, and then you should be okay. And I say should because there's a lot of variables.
So the thing is, what we're talking about is you're crossing over into a territory of rather than having residential grade equipment, you may consider having at least some lower end commercial equipment where you've got more control over firewall rules and prioritization and QoS concerns to prioritize things like VoIP traffic over Netflix traffic, for example. That does get a bit advanced. And it's not always for the faint of heart, but that might be the direction. You know, if you're a business owner and what we think of as a high producer, those types of investments to ensure your own productivity are definitely wise. And it is possible you may need some assistance with somebody experienced in that to set that kind of thing up. But those are features that you're not always going to get, you know, out of your routers and such that you'll find at a big box store.
Yep.
Or you just pay for a lot of bandwidth at home.
Oh, there is that.
Either would work. That would work too.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, on this subject, I'd have to look back to see if it's the same one having problems. We continue to have some audio issues on here. And again, there's so many variables that factor into this. It could be on an individual's computer working at home. I know I have a computer at home that is not anything impressive at all. And it's going to get an upgrade here soon. So that's a piece of it. Your bandwidth is a piece of it, all this stuff we've talked about. But there again, if you'd like to reach out to any of us after this call, we can look at your specific setup and see if there's a way to help. One more thing I will just mention, that as the world is kind of immediately shifting to an online social interaction, whether that's selling or, you know, people are just getting together for family events over Zoom or GoToWebinar or whatever. So the internet's being overloaded, internet traffic has spiked, the hosting platforms are getting overloaded. They don't have the capacity, or at least they weren't prepared for this immediate uptick in traffic and capacity. So there are factors that are outside of our control, but there are definitely things that we can do that are inside of our control. So because that is a pretty technical topic, and more importantly, it's specific to the environment, that's one that we can do, would be a great deep dive for after the call. So please reach out to any one of us afterwards and we can help you with that. And Jason made a comment, Meraki is not lower end. So I might have missed that if somebody on here said Meraki was low end. I'll agree with you.
I didn't mean this. It's not lower end. You can get them. Yeah, they're still expensive.
Yeah.
Something semi low end commercial. There's other stuff out there you can use. I just happen to get one because of reasons.
For reasons, yeah. Meraki, one thing they will do, and I don't know if they do this on routers and firewalls, but you can do a seminar or a webinar with them, and they'll send you free equipment sometimes. So, you know, with time-bombed licenses, they only go a year maybe, but it's a pretty decent value for spending an hour with them on a webinar. Which also I would just point out is a brilliant marketing tactic for any of us that are looking at how to promote products and services at a time like this. Give stuff away for limited time. So, all right, we're out of time for that topic, so let's continue. And again, this stuff bleeds over. Anybody that's chatting with us, feel free to come back to previous topics. That's not a problem. We're just trying to keep, as presenters, we're trying to keep this thing moving forward. The next one is employee engagement and accountability. How do we know if people are actually working when they're working from home?
Yeah, I think that's the way that as a manager you are used to manage. The norm now is there's a new norm, and I think the way you engage your staff and your team is a different approach now. But as a manager, I think it's very critical right now, not only from an office workspace, but how is your team doing? Checking in. They're dealing with home issues right now, as we've already talked about, and that's added stress. But I think we need to check in more frequently with your team, and I think some other guys on here have got some great ideas on that. But the way you manage is going to be a little different. There's products out there like Microsoft Teams. There's Slack. there's a way that you can chat and actually have face-to-face conversations in a more frequent way.
Yeah, we've moved from one daily huddle with the team to 2 daily huddles. So at the beginning of the day and closer towards the end of the day, as everybody's working more, dispersed from each other, and that's helping to keep a lot of the continuity between that and tools like Slack, Teams, keeping in communication with everybody and what's going on within, the various work for our clients.
Yeah, and the thing too, something that I worry about, and I'm still working on, to be honest with you, is this notion of over communicating as well. You can become so connected with everybody that you could literally spend your whole day typing conversations out. So finding a balance of how to communicate and under what circumstances is appropriate enough to guard against affecting the productivity of those you're trying to manage. That's a worthy concern as well.
I want to add something on there. I'm not in the video, but I want to add something on there. Typing conversations can be difficult when it comes to emotion. The issue you have is the people you're talking to may not understand whether you're, how you're trying to put this across, whether you're being sarcastic, whether you're being serious, whether you're joking. There are so many things that video allows you to do. As far as, when you check in with your team, you can see what's going on. You can see the look on their face, so you understand how they're reacting to what you're saying. Yeah. Be very careful when you're typing and just chatting, because it can go very wrong.
Great point.
On that note, as mentioned earlier, the management and engagement has changed a lot when you're trying to manage people remotely. We obviously, as a tech company, have the ability to just pick up and move our devices, and everybody's working remotely. Technically not an issue. But all of a sudden, all the engagement we were doing in-house just evaporated. All the techs are talking to each other, teammates are talking to each other, that collaboration. How do you mimic that collaboration when people aren't sitting beside each other and can't turn their chair around? So we've done a morning check-in where 8:10 in the morning, first thing we do is check in. Everybody can talk about their blocks and their priorities for the day. It's a way to just have everyone engage with each other as we would when we first walk into the office. But then the other thing around all the jokes and all the fun stuff that helps build that culture in your organization, what we ended up doing is adding a 15-minute meeting after lunch. There's no agenda, there's no work to be done. You don't talk about work, you just talk about fun stuff, drop some jokes in chat. Whoever's available can hop in. It's just an open Zoom meeting that anybody can drop into any day of the week. And it just becomes a way, and immediately when tensions and the anxiety was really high around the pandemic, it really helped our team bring that anxiety level down. A few jokes and shared experiences can do that.
Yep, our team, what we went and did is we opened up a Zoom account or a Zoom channel that is open all day long, and our leadership team is for the most part in that Zoom channel all day long. And any of our staff can just hop in. We can have conversations. In fact, most days we have about 6 or 7 people that are constantly connected, and they just mute themselves. And whenever they have a question, they just bring it back. And it mimics the atmosphere for us anyway of being in the same room, of being in the same environment. And every day we usually have like a little contest or some sort of thing to lift everybody's spirits. So the other day we all dressed up on Zoom in the morning, and just it's posted on our social media if you guys want to check it out. Just things like that, just to lift
Brian,
spirits.
I gotta stop you. You say dressed up, but you talked earlier about dressed up meaning shirt and tie. You're not talking about shirt and tie dressed up.
No, it was try to come to the morning meeting in the most outlandish, outrageous, while appropriate thing you could do. And if you look at the social media, there was about 16 or 17 of us on the channel, and it was just hilarious.
Appropriate is subjective. I'm just going to say that. We have a
Establish
question
those
come in,
guidelines
and
beforehand.
this kind of ties into something Chelsea was talking about before we got on this call. The question is, should we religiously be checking timesheets to see if people are fluffing their time? My quick thoughts on that before I hand it off to Chelsea, because I think you had a really good point on this, Chelsea. You hear the trust but verify. That's a pretty common advice given. I think there's an element of that. I think also this is a time where it might be okay to give people a little bit of leeway. We want to be productive. We've got to make sure that we're functioning as businesses, but we don't want to be too draconian about it. So Chelsea, go ahead and share your thoughts on that. I like what you had to say before.
Yeah, Justin. So the idea is, how do you know if your employees are actually working when they're working from home? And something that I just want to throw out there is during this time, we really need to be cognizant of our relationship that we have with our employees and make sure that we're still establishing and keeping the trust that we have with them. So actually, the studies that have been done so far on people working from home remotely have shown that they have an increase in 13% towards their productivity versus their counterparts who are still working from the office. So the research shows that, you know, people who are working from home are productive in a lot of ways, more so than people who are in the office. So I think that gives us a lot of hope. And it also reminds us that just because people are working from home, it doesn't mean that they're being less productive. It might actually be the other way around. So maybe trying not to nag them too much, keep that trust there.
I do want to touch on that one just a little bit because it sounds like the person who asked the question asked about timesheets specifically, which leads me to believe they may be in a service-based business like all of ours here today. In which case, yes, you should be checking timesheets to make sure the information is entered, because in our line of business, the only way to get paid is if we're recording our time against the client's timesheets and tracking what we're doing. So agreed, absolutely 100% with Chelsea. Flexibility is key. But if you're an employee who is being asked to track your time, there's a reason for that, and usually it's a billing reason. So especially now, we all need to be able to be paid for our work.
You know,
right. And it goes back to your KPIs as well. So any of your key performance indicators that you were using to track productivity before should be the same now that they were before.
Well, and so the thing is, with the software tools that we all use, you know, regardless of what the industry is, you know things like when people clock in and when they clock out. You know, electronically, if you're so inclined to go digging, you know when they turn on their software. You know when they do their first thing of the day. You know when they do their last thing of the day. And then you, of course, have the ways that you normally measure their productivity and evaluate their performance by, right? So you still have all that. But in a work at home environment, I would say that this is probably a better time to manage by trend as opposed to managing by day. And what I mean by that is, like today, for example, maybe Mary doesn't log in until 20 minutes after the day starts. Maybe there's nothing entered into the software until, 45 minutes later. And you wonder, okay, so where's the productivity, right? The ways that you would normally calculate that. But I would say that in this environment right now, because of the increased number of distractions that are in everybody's home-based workplace, it's probably just a good time to manage by trend and look at what the overall output of a production worker or service worker is over, say, the course of a 5-day work week, rather than what they individually accomplished today.
I like that.
100%, Dave. 100%.
One other thing I want to bring up here, before we get moving on, one of the downsides I see about working this way is in our office. When I'm in the office, my receptionist / dispatcher can see when I'm on the phone. She can see when the texts are on the phone. We know when we're in meetings, and this is kind of taking away all that presence information. So it's very easy to interrupt people while they're doing stuff and interrupt their workflow. Or I just got a text message or a Teams message from one of my texts going, "Hey, where's this documentation?" And now it's my fault. I didn't set my Teams to do not disturb. But think about the people you're working with and whether they're busy or not, because we get calls transferred to us when we're already on the phone, things like that. This is going to take a bit to iron out for us, at least, and we're in a pretty good space. So who knows how many people in there are in this space where they've got none of these controls.
Yeah, and it's true. I mean, with all the electronic means to do our jobs that we offer these employees and such to render productivity on behalf of our companies, we've also introduced a lot of new ways to allow for distractions as well. So I would say definitely look, be aware. That's what I do. But I always, I wait 3 or 4 days before I say anything. Maybe that's good, maybe that's bad, but my deal is that I'm trying to manage by trend, rather than daily output.
It's outcome. What is the outcome that we're measuring? Not necessarily the minute or the hour.
Right.
Right.
Agree.
So let's
100%.
move on to the next one. We've got how to host and promote a webinar. So we're going to switch a little bit from operations and more into sales and marketing. How do we continue to, get paid through this whole thing?
I'll start this one. As the self-proclaimed king of winging it, don't wing it. Be organized. Write your stuff down. Have an agenda. Have a script. Build something. I'm great at walking into networks and looking around and figuring out what's going on. I do not do very well when I'm off the cuff, talking to people, meetings, things like that. I fail miserably. Don't be me. Make sure you're organized. Get your thoughts together. Spend some time putting something together ahead of time. You want to at least appear professional. And actually, I think that's coming up more. But get your stuff together. There, I'll leave it at that.
On that
Well,
same
and-
note,
Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead, Brian.
sorry, I was gonna say on that same note, while you don't want to wing it, you also don't want to over plan it, because if you over plan it, then it looks like you're reading from a script. So you want to just have like sort of some notes that you could just quickly read, and then it'll jog your memory, and you're able to then, as the expert, you should be able to talk about whatever topic you want to speak about without having to read from a script, because those are always terrible. Sorry, Dave.
Well, sure, you want to preserve your authenticity, and that's what you're really trying to do, is have your bullet points for your meeting, the things that are critical, to get out, but you want to preserve your authenticities for sure. So, and the other thing that I would say is just, master your environment. So much of working, including selling in a technology-based environment, is just having your stuff mastered, right? So whatever phone system you use, whatever meeting platform you have tools available to you within it to give a smooth engagement to your customer or your prospects. So practice those things, right? We're all quarantined right now, at least here in Southern Illinois we are. So I would say use your tools and practice by calling your mom, call a family member, just practice doing what you do. And if at very least practice making those connections so that the impression that you leave with a sales prospect is not one of struggling with your own technology, right? Because you're supposed to have that mastered.
So a question came in, which was perfect because it's one we were going to talk about anyways. Is it better to do a live webinar or a pre-recorded webinar?
And on your skill set.
I can jump in here real quick, and I'm sure Chelsea has something to add as well. From my perspective, I have always been a little afraid of doing webinars. I'm not a very good public speaker. I mean, in this particular forum, I've got lots of coworkers that I've been meeting with on a weekly basis for the last 3-4 years, so not as stressful or anxiety. But when I'm doing a webinar on my own, especially at the beginning, I had a lot of anxiety towards it. So I would record the webinar, and most of webinar platforms have the ability to play the webinar, and then you can go live right after to answer questions. So that's definitely a time where you would want to play a recorded webinar, is if you have so much anxiety towards it that you may not present well.
And I would say there's probably a balance to strike as well. If you have the technology ability to introduce recorded clips, particularly if your subject matter has complexity to it, and it needs to be stated a certain way in order to be fair to the person that you're talking to, there's nothing wrong with pre-recording some clips and sprinkling in some live commentary on that in a Q&A format, as sort of like Brian was talking about.
Right. And I think that one of the main differences between whether you're going to do it in a live webinar version or something that's pre-recorded is if you want audience participation throughout the webinar. So like we're doing here today, people can come in and ask us questions. It's very interactive. So if you're not wanting participation, then something that's pre-recorded could be the way to go. And then my second point would be, like today we're doing a panel. So that's a good option for people who may be nervous, maybe somebody who's never done a webinar before. It's a lot easier to do it with a group of people than just on your own. So think about that if there's somebody that you can bring in and do the webinar with you.
Yeah, that's a big help. Big help.
I would say whichever one is easier for you to get going, just do it. That's the most important part. Whether if you're more comfortable doing the pre-recorded one, do that. If you're more comfortable doing a live one and get some friends like we have here today on a panel, do that. Right now is a really great time to cancel that call. Right now is a really great time to get out there and do these webinars. Executives are probably sitting at home like we are, have a little bit more time to attend a webinar, which on a normal day-to-day, week-to-week schedule, how many of us have signed up for webinars and seminars where we can't attend? You couldn't find a better time to get on and do a webinar now. Do it with some tact. Don't do hard sell this day and age, but at least get out there and get your content and your message out there.
Yeah, less is more.
That's an important point.
Yeah, less is more. Don't get too graphically going to, make it simple and storyboard out your presentation so that, you have your talking points, but, you don't have to bullet point and read bullet points.
So I will add one comment here. I haven't done a ton of webinars, but I've done a fair number of them. The first one that I did, it terrified me. I mean, Brian mentioned it's hard to get on there and do these things live. And the way I was able to kind of cross that bridge was I had a vendor who wanted me to sell their stuff. And so he was actually willing to come on this webinar and he presented the entire thing. I did an initial introduction. As I kind of warmed up and calmed down a little bit, I was able to engage with him. But in the beginning, I read a very scripted intro, and then I just kind of shook in the corner, scared like whatever. But after doing that for a little while on that particular webinar, I warmed up and I was able to just be more myself. And so long story, I need to make this more concise, is get other people involved, both in sharing the presentation, the burden of presenting, and also in promoting. So that it's critical. It is so hard to do all of this. Unless you have a really solid captive audience, it is tough to get people on a webinar. So get other people involved in promoting it, get with associations, get with your vendors, or like we're doing. We're just peers. We all own IT companies, and we talk behind the scenes anyways. And so we thought, hey, let's get together and share this burden. So that's a really good way to get started.
And that jumps into the promoting of the webinar as well, because that's a whole nother beast in and of itself. So you have hopefully a list that you are sending your invite out for your webinar, people that you are wanting to watch. But if you're doing this with a joint venture partner, a vendor, or even panelists, that gives you access to a whole nother list. So whoever you could be doing this webinar with, they'll be sending it to their contacts as well. So that's another great way to market your webinar.
And if you're going to pre-write this or modify something, have somebody else proofread it. The first webinar I gave, I completely missed a slide, got to that slide and went, so enlist the people around you.
Yeah, for sure. All right, back to the audience. You guys have any other questions for us, please throw it in the chat. Otherwise, you just get to hear us drone on, and we're tech IT guys, so we aren't always that super interesting.
It's worth mentioning too, just to continue that for just another moment, the idea that you'd mentioned, Justin and Brian, about your first webinars and feeling like you're maybe not engaging or too scripted or just maybe a little nervous about doing it. Most of us share those types of issues. But the thing is, bringing a vendor in, that's a fantastic idea, because when you think about it, whatever industry that you're in, maybe you have a supplier that has insight into your industry. Remember, the two of you partner to deliver services to your constituency. And so your constituency, you may be very surprised to learn how interested they would be to hear from one of your vendors. So yeah, I would definitely give that some thought.
So let's go ahead and segue into, these are very similar topics, so we can continue this conversation, but we're going to also kind of introduce how do we use some of these tools, whether it's the VoIP, the voice over IP phones, GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, Zoom, all these different platforms we have, Microsoft Teams. How do we use these tools to continue selling? And again, it may not be business as usual, but it doesn't mean we have to just shutter ourselves in and quit working. So what are some things that we can do there?
Yeah, I think there's lots of tools available here that we can use. Each tool has its own pros and cons. The big names are obviously Zoom, which everybody's discovered in the last 2 weeks, and it would have been nice to own some Zoom stock before this. So Zoom, Teams, Slack, those are the communication, and RingCentral communication hubs, but they each do slightly different things. Some do live calling, but then there's a RingCentral and these hosted voice over IP applications, which are a replacement to your traditional phone system. And your traditional phone systems are replaced by fully cloud-hosted phone system like RingCentral, or you can do on-premise VoIP as well, where they have a little box that sits in your server room at your office that does your connectivity. It really doesn't matter which one you're using. Each has its pros and cons. Obviously, the hosted cloud provides the greatest amount of flexibility, which if you're a business owner right now and you don't have VoIP in your office, you definitely want to talk to your tech partner to see which would be the better fit for your organization. There's pros and cons to each, there's cost differences to each, but obviously as people have figured out over the last 2 weeks, fully cloud hosted has a lot of advantages where you can just tell your employees to go home and they just continue to work as normal. And a lot of these cloud hosted solutions also have integrated meeting application.
Right.
So the Zoom meeting is integrated into something like, I'm not selling RingCentral, but I'm saying RingCentral has it included and it's just reskinned as RingCentral meetings. So, and a lot of telephone providers, local telephone providers are doing the same thing. Find the right solution that works for you, play around with them and understand what you're trying to accomplish. Write it down for yourself and then choose the right solution, what you need in your office with your team and then externally to your contacts.
Yeah, an exciting aspect of a lot of the cloud-based phone solutions today is that you now can have an application on your iPhone or on your Android phone or on your desktop or on your Mac, and you're connected to your office. You're not tied to just that traditional handset anymore. If you use the app that's on your cell phone, the nice thing is when you have to make an outbound call through that application, it's coming out. That call will show up as if it's coming from your company, from your office, instead of from your personal cell phone. So that way you're not really exposing your personal cell phone number to people that maybe you don't want to, because it's more of a professional relationship.
Well, you're scaling
Especially true for employees.
In that manner.
Mm-hmm.
So let me talk about something that happened. This was pre-COVID outbreak. I started doing email marketing pretty recently. It was building up a list and I was sending out messages to people and not getting a tremendous response. But my call to action when I was doing this was to try to set a face-to-face meeting with people. And kind of on a whim, I put a little button at the bottom of the email message that said, and actually I put two, I put schedule a face-to-face meeting or schedule a web meeting. And what I saw is that 9 times out of 10, pretty close to that statistic, people were booking the web meetings over the face-to-face meetings. So even without this outbreak going on, sometimes it's just more comfortable. People want to meet. They don't want to have to leave their office. They don't necessarily want to have somebody come in their office for a variety of reasons. But so this is an opportunity. If you're not already doing this, start reaching out to your prospects, to your clients, and see if they will get together with you over a Zoom meeting or whatever resource you have. I use GoToWebinar and GoToMeeting. That's my platform, but there's a bunch of them out there. But experiment with this because, again, we don't have to stop selling. We don't have to stop doing business just because people are in a state of panic.
Well, and one nice thing about this new sort of evolution in the economy and in business practice is, your prospects from a sales standpoint I think they sort of secretly enjoy thinking that they've got this piece of power over you, right? That if they don't like what they're hearing, they can just hang up, right? I think you're conceding them that advantage, and it might actually work to your advantage. But the balancing act for you is that you're in a sales process, and it doesn't really matter, depending on what you're selling, it doesn't really matter what shape the racetrack is, right? The finish line's still in the same place, and the end result is still the same thing. And so it's you can create a nice give and take where they have an advantage that they can hold on to, and that might help them engage you, ironically, even a little bit better and more to your liking.
Right.
Right. And on a different note too, it's a great opportunity for you to practice your sales meetings because you have the option of call recording. So if you're using a VoIP platform or if you're using GoToMeeting, Zoom, you can record that meeting and go back and watch it later and study yourself. What did you say? How did you approach topics? How did they respond? That's a great resource to have that you wouldn't normally have in a face-to-face meeting.
Yeah, especially if you're managing a sales team, that's super valuable.
Oh yeah, for sure. You got to remember too, though, in some states, I guess I should say Illinois is one of them. You have to be careful about call recording the other party. You're not really supposed to do that unless you've notified them. So just be sure you're observing your state and local laws with respect to that.
100%.
The nice thing about doing all this, yeah, I know. The nice thing about doing all these new face-to-face meetings, I mean, we have family members that are on Zoom meetings now. We had somebody's birthday, and we're all jumping on a phone call over. Well, it's not a phone call; it was a Zoom meeting, and it's nice that everybody's becoming familiar with these technologies in their personal life, which will translate to their business life. And why are they getting together in their personal lives over Zoom instead of just a phone call? It's because we want that face-to-face connection. That's what helps people sell. People buy from people. And when we're doing these Zoom calls or these GoToMeeting calls or webinars like this, if you're a salesperson or in any sort of client relationship role, we want to opt, instead of the phone call, opt for the Zoom meeting link instead. I mean, you can always downskill to a phone call after, but the connection over video where they can see you, especially if it's your personal space, if we see somebody in their home, their kids in the background, people are relaxed about it now given the circumstances, but that personal connection will really help you make that relationship with the party on the other end. And nobody cares if it looks messy behind you or a blank white wall.
Well, some people do.
Just make sure they can see your face.
I'll get a background.
Well, sometimes you get into situations like this, and if you have no lighting, if the lighting in your room is bad or whatever else, and they're looking at a outline of your face, because I have a window behind me, but luckily this room isn't that bad.
I would say too, just to circle back to one of the previous points, is now's your chance, given all these advantages, master those technologies, whatever it is that you have. Resist the urge to flip and flop around and try a whole bunch of different stuff. It's just my opinion, but find something that you're comfortable with and settle on it. And man, use that sucker like crazy, and it will make you a lot more effective and better at what you're doing, and you'll improve yourself in ways that you probably did not even expect. And when real life resumes and we get to have face-to-face meetings again, I think you will probably realize at some point during that you've experienced a lot of personal growth through this experience. So.
And while there can be complexity to some of these tools, and if you're completely green to it, it can be overwhelming at first. Which one do I choose and why? Talk to your tech professional. Talk to any one of us. Any one of us will be happy to jump on a Zoom call or something similar to this and run through a conversation with you to help you make that decision. It's not easy. Yeah.
Our audience has been kind of quiet, so I'm going to shout out again. Guys, if you have anything you'd like to ask, any stories you'd like to tell, please participate. Feel free. We've got a couple more talking points, and then we're about 6 minutes before the top of the hour, so we'll wrap up here shortly.
I think it's important while we have this opportunity to practice. Like I know Dave was saying it earlier, know your tools, practice your content. You can record yourself like Chelsea's previously mentioned. With this changing environment, and I was on a couple of sales calls earlier this week, and it was nice to have this type of face-to-face connection. And at the end of it, I realized I'm not taking full advantage of the Zoom call with these prospects in this case. And I could have dusted off my old slide deck, which in person is really challenging to do. Zoom and all these web technologies allow us to present a different kind of sales pitch if that's your role, or if you're in a relationship role. We can present materials and collaborate much easier than sometimes we can do in person, and differently. So dust off that old slide deck, make a new one. Your sales process, if you're thinking of sales and growth perspective right now, everybody needs growth and some sales given our current environment. Rethink your sales process. How can you improve it given the new tech environment that we all have to live in?
And think about how much you're not wasting paper.
And driving.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and fuel.
My car is sad right now.
Feels neglected. Mine does too.
Yeah.
That's okay though.
That's just fine.
Well, guys, I think we've pretty much touched on everything that we had. I don't see any additional questions coming in. So let's go ahead and we'll wrap up. I'll say one more time for everybody that's participated today. You'll get an email sometime pretty close to this time tomorrow with all of our contact information. I can definitely speak for myself. I think I'm speaking for everybody else here. We're here to help. There is no charge. You know, we'll gain clients down the road. That's fine. We're all surviving this thing. The IT industry isn't going anywhere, at least not right now. You know, fingers crossed. But we're staying pretty busy. So please use us as a resource. We're here to help. You know, banding together as a community is really what I think matters right now. So final question. Jason did want to know if we're all wearing pants. Jason, I'm not going to answer that, unfortunately, for legal reasons.
I'm wearing shorts. It's sunny out, so I live in Michigan.
Yeah.
It's sunny out. We switch to shorts when it's above 40.
Oh, no.
Well, we enjoyed more snow in eastern Idaho this morning, so.
Glad it was you and not me.
I bring us back to point one, which was get dressed like you're going to work. So
Right.
There you go.
Yeah, and you know what? I think we missed one thing earlier about the fact that we're mainly working from home, or a lot of us are working from home. It's easy to roll out of bed and go to work. Make sure you take a break. Make sure you take that lunch. Get away from the desk. It's really easy to sit here, and I speak from experience. It's really easy for me to sit here all day long. It's easy for me to eat right here. Go out and take a walk. Get away from it.
Yeah.
And help your employees do that, because they're oftentimes, you know, their enjoyment after hours in front of that same device, and it can be taxing to be in front of that same chair, you know, 12, 15 hours a day.
Yep.
Right.
True.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you
everybody.
very much.
Appreciate
Thank you,
everybody for being
everyone.
here. Take
Have a
care.
great week.
Bye.
Yep.